Welcome everybody to Religion Ruins Everything. Across all of our different sites, we have Evansville West, Evansville East, we have Henderson, Mount Vernon, online. Some people watch on the app. I'm now convinced that we have sites I don't even know about. It's a little bit hard to keep track of. But thank you for all joining us and kind of walking through something. What we're doing with this series is, in the post 9/11 world, religion has really kind of gotten hit, I guess you would say, with negative press, and some of it's probably deserved, but there's this sense that, first of all, religion causes violence. Religion is anti-science and reason and rationality, and we dealt with the violence thing last week, and we're gonna go ahead and shift gears today and go into this whole thing of religion ruins reason and rationality. I absolutely love this topic, so I'm hoping you'll enjoy it and as we walk through, and let me just say this right out of the chute about this. I think in some ways it can be deserved. I mean, here's what I mean by that. I think we all have people that we know that are religious that have done kind of kooky things. Religion is associated with kind of goofy, crazy actions in some way. We've showed you this telephone booth that we put out in the public because during this series, we kind of want it to be a conversation. And so we've given people opportunities to give their opinions. And there was a great line that someone locally said that I think represents what a lot of people think about these kinds of things. And I'm gonna bring it up to you again. We showed it last week, but it says this: religion is what causes 90% of terrorism in the world. Now, here's the line I really want you to get. It gives people excuses to make stupid decisions. Culture is harmed because religion makes people act in odd mannerisms, and it makes you feel bad about yourself. I get why someone would say that. Matter of fact, I got on Google and I just kind of Googled weird religious rituals. And what I love about Google is you can always pull up a list of just about anything, and I found a few of these. Here's some samples of some kind of out there stuff. There's a Catholic church in Brazil. Now what you're looking at, this picture, these are actually wax figures of body parts: legs, arms, heads, livers, eyes, and some other stuff. And they have these things in what's called the miracle room. In other words, if someone has a problem with one of these limbs or body parts, they'll make a wax figure out of it and hang it from the ceiling in there. Now, my recommendation to them would be that they charge admission and let people see it, Halloween or something. Several years ago, I was in Hollywood. I get to walk down Hollywood Boulevard. Here's what shocked me. It was really interesting, is that the word Scientology you could see everywhere. There was signs on buildings, there were billboards. I was even handed a pamphlet by someone on the street that was talking about Scientology. You've probably heard of Tom Cruise and John Travolta, people like that, believing in that. Well, in Scientology, they have this little machine that supposedly tests what kind of energy you're giving off. And in other words, they think they can hold this up to you to see if you're carrying some kind of spiritual baggage. As a matter of fact, L. Ron Hubbard, the inventor of, or the founder rather, of what's it called again? Scientology. Scientology said that he could read it, and it was so sensitive that, here's his quote, that he could tell that tomatoes scream when they are sliced. This machine could pick it. It was so sensitive that tomatoes screamed when they're sliced. Now, I want you to think about that when you go out to lunch today. Hinduism in India, there's a tradition they have. This was really kind of a trip where they drop newborn babies from 50 feet up down into blankets that people are holding. Drop them 50 feet, newborn babies, as a religious ritual. And there's protest about this every year, they say, but they've been doing this for 500 years. Now, the claim is that they've never harmed one single baby in 500 years. So I get that. I wonder if it gives them kind of a start in life. It's almost like a thrill ride. Maybe that's what it does. We don't know what kind of effect it has. I always wonder when it comes to practices like that, who comes up with that the first time? Can you imagine, hey, I got an idea. We could do this as a thing. Drop a baby from 50 feet up. Snake handling. Now, this is a little bit closer to home. Eastern Kentucky and Eastern Tennessee, you could go to a church today and they would have snake handling. I was reading that there was a pastor of one of these churches that does this that died within the last year doing this. This is a real deal. You know, as I look at that picture, though, I love this. I think the smartest guy in that room is the guitar player. You know, if you had to be in a snake handling church, the best thing to do would be to play guitar, right? Hey, you want to handle some snakes? Well, my hands are full and I'll accompany you guys. Smart move. Do you remember back in 1997, some of us are old enough to remember that. In 1997, there was a comet that went across. It was really, really cool. You could see it. It was like a star with a giant tail on it called the Hale-Bopp comet was going on. Well, while that was happening, there was a cult out in San Diego that their religious belief said that there was a spaceship following that comet, and that to get on that spaceship, your soul could get there, but your body couldn't go. And 39 of them all drank some stuff that killed them. They committed suicide. 39 people. You know, I was thinking more and more about this whole weird thing. And one thing I had to admit, though, is I think when people come into our church, we've warned people about this before, that we stand, a lot of us stand, and when we're singing music, you know, we're raising our hands and stuff like that. Well, we warn people that might be considered just a little bit odd. It can be perceived that way. That's kind of a strange behavior. I'm holding my hands up to this deity thing. Now, with all that said, though, the only little pushback, I get it. I get that a lot of behaviors can seem a little bit odd. But with all that, the only little pushback I'd give is that I don't think that weirdness is reserved for just religion. Football season started. I'm pretty amped, and I love the Colts. And so look at this guy. I mean, so religion is not the only place where human beings express sort of different behaviors. Maybe it's not only a religion thing. Maybe it's a human thing. But the point is this: yes, you can point in all kinds of directions and find odd behavior. And so I get it. And it seems to be removed from reason and rationality. Now, here's another thing that makes that point, if you will. There are religious traditions, including in Christian churches, that would say when it comes to reason and rationality, that the definition of faith is you don't use reason and rationality. In other words, they would encourage you to not use your mind, not do science, not do any of that. And as a matter of fact, faith is the absence of those things. Now, I personally, we're going to talk about some of this as we go through this week and next week. My personal opinion about that is I don't think that can be true, because any faith system, no matter what it is, no matter how eccentric it is, could make that claim. Think about the Hale-Bopp thing that was called Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate cult, you know, there might have been someone handed the cup of poison, you know, let's go get on the spaceship. Someone might have said, I don't know, are you sure that's the right thing to do? Well, hey, man, you just got to believe. You turn off your rational mind, just believe. Take a leap in the dark, you know, that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's that simple, but that has been articulated that way about religion. But here's the deeper thing. Along with all this stuff about religion and rationality not being compatible, the undercurrent that's the most disturbing to me, and I think needs to be kind of talked through in the conversation we're having, it really is becoming more and more popular to make atheism and reason or rationality, and by extension even science, synonymous with one another. You see that a lot. There's an increasing move. In other words, it's not just atheism. To be an atheist means to be a reasonable person. One good example of this is there's a rally that's been held a few times in Washington, D.C. called the Reason Rally. Well, it's a gathering. It's a gathering of atheists, right? But they call it the Reason Rally. There's a few shots of that. Guy like his T-shirt, "In Science We Trust." But really, I got to give some credit to this girl's sign. Science flies you to the moon. Religion flies you into buildings. Now that is pretty clever. But the message is the same. There's in our culture, it's increasingly being kind of put out there that that rationality and reason, and by extension science, are synonymous with atheism and not just some kind of tool in the logical belt. And that's really where we need to kind of process things and really look into that. Is that true? Now, here's how I want to go about that. I've told you before that we said last week, if you really want to examine thought systems, belief systems, that's what Christianity is, Buddhism, Islam, communism, any number of belief systems, and they can be irreligious, they can be religious, is try, if you can, go back to the founder first. Communism is an irreligious belief system. You can go back to Marx and Engels and kind of examine communism. Buddhism, you can go back to the founder. Islam, you can go back to the founder. Being a Christian church, we keep saying you need to go back to first Jesus Christ of Nazareth. He's the founder of the thing. He's the one that kind of that set this whole thing into motion. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a story recorded about Jesus' life, and it's really a conversation. Now here's what I'd like you to do. Just kind of picture in your mind, we're getting in the time machine, and we go back to the time, and I'm going to say, I have watched more than one episode of Grey's Anatomy and other medical shows. And I noticed that they always have in surgery rooms, they have like this grandstands up a story, and they have glass where they all get to look down, students get to look down on surgeries being performed. I kind of want you to do that. As we're reading this passage, let's imagine we don't know a whole lot about either Jesus or the people he's talking to, and we're just listening to their conversation, watching them go back and forth. Now, this would be taking place in Jerusalem back in Jesus' life. And here's the thing. He's been there for several days, and he's been teaching people. And by now, he's become a celebrity. The Bible says that the common people heard him gladly. He was famous. He was well-liked. People thought he was awesome. He's making declarations. He's teaching truth. And the people that he's talking to, it says the Jews, but it means a specific group. The specific group is leaders and scholars, most likely. And they've been listening to Jesus do stuff, and they sit him down basically and are quizzing him down about who he is and about his claims. And that's where it's going to pick up. It's actually found in John chapter 8, beginning at verse 48. And what I'm doing is this whole chapter almost is this entire conversation. We're just getting into a section, and we're picking it up kind of right at this climactic moment to the end. It says this: the Jews answered him, "Aren't we right in saying that you are a Samaritan and demon-possessed?" I love the way that starts. It's like, okay, this conversation's not going terribly well. "I'm not possessed by a demon," said Jesus, "but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. I'm not seeking glory for myself, but there is one who seeks it, and he is the judge." Now we're going to see that word glory again. Seeking glory just means seeking to make famous, seeking to have the reputation of lifted up. It's kind of the idea. "Very truly I tell you," and then he says this interesting thing, "whoever obeys my word will never see death." At this they exclaimed, "Now we know that you're demon-possessed. Abraham died and so did the prophets. Yet you say that whoever obeys your word will never taste death. Are you greater than our father Abraham? He died and so did the prophets." And here's a great line. "Who do you think you are?" Jesus replied, "If I glorify myself, my glory means nothing. My Father, whom you claim as your God, is the one who glorifies me." It's interesting, he's become, by all estimations, the most famous person ever lived. That's an interesting little twist there. "Though you do not know him, I know him." I like this line. "If I said I did not, I would be a liar like you." Now the gloves are off on both sides. "But I do know him, and I obey his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day. He saw it and was glad." And here they go again. "You're not yet 50 years old," they said to him, "and you have seen Abraham." "Very truly I tell you," Jesus answered, "before Abraham was born, I am." Then conversation over. At this they picked up stones to stone him, but Jesus hid himself, slipping away from the temple grounds. He's got like these ninja skills. Like all of a sudden he just kind of slips away, right? And so they pick up stones to stone him. All right, so you've heard the conversation just kind of flowing back and forth. Let me ask you a question. If you were watching that, didn't know a whole lot about either one, just kind of watching and listening. Of the two in the dialogue, who's the more rational and reasonable? Now, it's not a trick question, but I think in church, people think, I think the answer is supposed to be Jesus, kind of no matter what. I would actually dispute the other way. I think the ones that sound more rational are the leaders and the scholars, the Jews. They really do. When you size up what Jesus is saying, if you're just kind of watching this conversation go on, you would determine that Jesus is saying some crazy kind of stuff. And if you watch the entire conversation, if you went back, you would notice he flows from claiming to be sent by God to claiming to know God, and he ends it by claiming to be God. That's why they picked up the stones to stone him. And that's why they intro, the whole thing started with, what did they say? Aren't we right in saying that you're a Samaritan and you are demon possessed? That's quite an assessment. First of all, a Samaritan, for them, it was actually kind of a racial slur. You see, the Samaritans were people, and it was that they looked down on as an ethnic group. They thought of them as half-breeds, kind of impure people ethnically, and they also thought of them as being heretics. They were people who were wrong about what they thought about religion and everything else. They were not held in high esteem at all. And really, they're just insulting Jesus. Jesus talks about that. You dishonor me. They did. And then, as if that weren't bad enough, aren't we right in saying you're a Samaritan and demon-possessed? And they say that a couple of times, right? Now, what are they saying? Well, back in those days, if you called someone demon-possessed, you were calling them one of two things. The first thing was possibly, you're crazy. You're out of your mind. You're completely out of touch with the reality. There is a thing called the crazy train, and you're in the first car, and you are going down the tracks really, really, really fast. It could be that. Or it could be something worse. A demon also implies they may have been saying, no, we know you're in touch with the reality, buddy. And you're a deceiver, and you're a destroyer of people. In other words, the assessment was not complimentary at all. Why? Because he says, if you just look at it rationally, he says some really, really, really trippy things. There's no middle ground. So they are reacting rationally. Now, let me ask you another question, though. Jesus says all this kind of wild stuff. What would be required for Jesus in everything that he says to be perfectly reasonable and rational? That's not a trick question either. What would be required? The answer is very simple, actually. That he's telling the truth. That he's telling the truth. That no matter how way out there, no matter how crazy it sounds in some ways, that he's actually telling the truth. Because Jesus doesn't say anything that you and I can't imagine is either, he's not violating the laws of logic, he's not violating rationality if it's really real, if God really exists and he was sent from God and he knows God. And this God creator, maker of the universe is certainly capable of coming to the earth as a man, which is what Christian orthodoxy teaches, that Jesus was God walking around in the flesh. Well, that's all of that is certainly possible. It's not hard to imagine that there is a God who created all things that could pull that off. So it doesn't break the laws of logic or rationality or any of that stuff. The one thing that's required for Jesus to be rational, reasonable, is that he's telling the truth. Because if he is telling the truth, instantly he's rational, reasonable. He's not saying anything wrong or anything. That's kind of how that works. Now, this is a very, very, very important principle. Because these guys are using rationality. But here's the weakness of rationality and reason. It's possible to miss the truth if you're just using rationality and reason. Here's what I mean by that. Have you ever had, now I was looking back in the history, I was hoping that I had this happen. I don't think I ever did. But have you ever had an experience where you knew something was true? You had experienced something, you know it was real, and then you went and told somebody else, and they thought you were at least crazy or a little off, or you weren't telling the truth. And you ever had that happen before? Surely somebody has, right? In other words, the people that you tell, they're using their rationality and reason. However, they miss the truth of what you say. I have someone that I know who, it was a very terrible thing, was violated by somebody. And when they went to tell others because of who that person was that violated them, they weren't believed. People were using their logic, people were using their reason, people were using all those things, but they missed the truth. You can think rationally and miss the truth. Now, here's other examples of this. I haven't seen this. I've heard about the making of a murderer, that was called. Is that just recently, as far as I understand the show goes, is that there was one of these suspects who had been convicted as a murderer, but was later released. There's a whole website called the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project, and it's that. You've probably heard in the news several times because of DNA evidence and that kind of thing. Number of people who have been declared guilty in the past, who've even gone to jail and things like that, have been exonerated on what? Further evidence. In other words, see, law, when you go into a court of law and you're a part of a jury or you're a defense attorney or you're a prosecuting attorney, you're a judge, by definition, the goal, I know there can be corrupt courts, but the goal is essentially reason, rationality, evidence. It's all kind of piled together and they try to look at it, but they can still get it wrong. How? Reason, always remember this, reason and rationality are only as good as the information feeding them. Reason and rationality are only as good as the information feeding them. It is possible to think completely rational, but still miss the truth. Now let me give you a principle that I want you to remember. When it comes to reason and rationality, Christianity doesn't ask you to suspend your rationality and reason. Christianity does not ask you to suspend your rationality and reason. It asks you to expand your rationality and reason. Let some other information in there. Look at things different. When you consider Jesus, consider some other things. It is possible just to be in kind of a circle where you're using perfect reason and rationality, and it's never asking you to violate the laws of logic or any of that kind of stuff, and there are such things. It just simply says, put more evidence in. And let me kind of give you some guidance on how to do that and what that actually looks like from another thing that Jesus says that's really out there, okay? It's really out there and kind of trippy, and it's a heck of a claim. We actually read it last week. Now, the context is Jesus could be executed, and he's standing in front of a Roman governor who has the power to do it and exercises that power. His name is Pontius Pilate, and he and Jesus are having a dialogue. And Pilate says something, and then it says in John, this is found in John chapter 18, verse 37 and 38. It says, Jesus answered, he's talking to Pilate, "You say that I'm a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth." And already there's some stuff like his perceptions of himself are pretty heavy. Now listen to this line. "Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me." Now think about that for a second. That's this crazy claim that instantly can be completely rational and reasonable if he's telling the truth. Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me. And I love the reply. It says, "What is truth?" retorted Pilate. With this, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him." In other words, I get a kick out of Pilate. I mean, he had this great opportunity. This guy says to him, "Everyone on the side of the truth listens to me." And instead of Pilate going, "Really? Wow. What's truth? And how can I know the truth?" He just says, kind of as a dismissal thing, "What is truth?" And he walks off. "Man, I was trying to watch the Colts on television, and now I'm stuck in this situation." That's kind of his reaction, right? But listen very carefully like this. Christianity would call you not to dismiss your rationality and reason, but to expand your rationality and reason by injecting other things and making the goal always the truth about ultimate things, the truth about ultimate things in life. Now, I've spoken hundreds of times, and I know some one-lifers have heard me hundreds of times, and so they've heard me say this probably hundreds of times. But the best definition of truth that I personally ever heard was a book I read about 15 years ago. It was written by a guy named John Frame. It always stuck with me, though, because it was very simple but very helpful. when it comes to defining truth. What is truth? He said the truth is what is. Very tempting to tell a Bill Clinton joke right now, but I won't do that because that would be, the truth is what is. Now, it's not just playing with words. Think about it. All it's saying is, what is the truth? You know what the truth is? The truth is what's actual, what's real. The truth is what is. This table, it's true that this table is here. It's true that this laptop is here. It's actual. It would be a lie to say it's not here, right? Simple definition. Now, I know you can go to philosophy classes and stuff, and they'll say things like, well, how do you know that table is really there? Or, how do you know you're not dreaming that that table and that laptop are there? Easy. If I were to pick up this table and throw it at your head and you ducked to get out of the way, you know that's the truth. This table is here. It's the truth to tell it's there. What you're doing when it comes to assessing Jesus or any other thought system, you're looking for what is. And you're looking for what evidence there is. And you can use your rational mind, but you let things in. You look at things from different angles. You consider other pieces of evidence. Now, a great example of this is, I've told you about C.S. Lewis before. A number of us around here know about C.S. Lewis. He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, the children's books, a number of other things, and a brilliant man who was a professor of Renaissance and medieval literature at Oxford University, kind of in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And he was an atheist when he was at school, but he had a number of discussions with J.R.R. Tolkien, who's famous for writing the Lord of the Rings series, right? And The Hobbit. And they interacted, and J.R.R. Tolkien got Lewis to kind of expand out and consider some other evidences. Well, C.S. Lewis went from an atheist to a believing person. And he was super fired up about it, and he wrote all kinds of books about it. The Chronicles of Narnia have those things inside of it. Believe in Jesus, because he felt so deeply about it. Well, in the early 40s, during World War II, back when radio was television, the BBC asked C.S. Lewis to just describe the Christian faith and explain the Christian faith on radio. And he did. And those talks that he gave all the way back then were converted into a book, and it's called Mere Christianity. Now, the mountain peak of this book, which is a brilliant book, I highly recommend it, the mountaintop statement that he makes in the book gets to this very thing that I'm talking about, expanding out and being willing to look, take your rational mind and apply it to Jesus and his claims and that. Listen to what C.S. Lewis says when it comes to assessing Jesus. He says, quote, I am trying here to prevent anyone saying the really foolish thing that people often say about him. I'm talking about Jesus. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. Now that's the one thing we must not say. A man who is merely a man and said the sort of things that Jesus said that we saw just a moment ago would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level with the man who says he's a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. Doesn't that sound familiar? You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else he's a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come up with any of this patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. Now that's talking about looking at this thing where Jesus sounds irrational, right? And some of the things that he's saying. But here's the problem that Lewis put together with his rational mind. It was, hey, wait a second. Jesus always, in everybody's mind, throughout history, has made the top of the list of great moral teachers. Martin Luther King would quote him. He's the one that told the story of the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son. And he said things like, if someone hits you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. Love your enemies. He caused, history knows this, there's no disputing this, no matter what you think of him. He caused a compassion revolution, a humility revolution in the ancient world that's still going on to this day. This is the most famous, the most influential man in all of history. But the problem is what we saw and what the Jews saw when they were talking to him. He sounds crazy. The claims that he makes, if you really look at them rationally, seem off. And the only thing that will make them reasonable, the only thing that will make them rational is if he's telling the truth, if that's what really is, that he was sent by God, that he knows God, that in the end, he is God. There's really no in between. And so that's an example of Lewis expanding his rationality. He's still using it. He's still looking at evidence. And that would be my challenge to all of us. Go back and look at Jesus, consider who he is, what he's about. And guys, in the end, that's what we want to do around here. I've told my story, about getting off drugs and all that kind of stuff, but early on, a couple things happened to me that marked me deeply. First of all, in my walk with Jesus coming to him, I did have genuine, true, profound, call it emotional experiences, a sense of his presence and his reality where I didn't have to see him. I didn't have to see him there, but I felt him so deeply and sensed him so deeply, he might as well have been sitting there really in person. I've had those kinds of experiences before. But I also had them, a number of them, back when I was in college. Back when I was in a university setting and I had to study astrophysics and chemistry and history and biology along with my theological studies. Now, the reason I tell you that is because in this modern age, guys, I think it's so desperately needed that you need to know that if you want to experience Jesus, you can have very, very powerful experiences. We say around here, we believe in spiritual power. So we pray because it's real. We believe people can have that. We always offer prayer at the end of every services. We're big on prayer around here because we believe you can experience Jesus and very, very deeply and very, very personally. But at the same time, especially for those of you who need this kind of stuff, we believe very deeply. We say we believe people can bring their brain to church. Meaning you can think about these things with your rational mind. You can include evidence. You can assess things. You can ask questions. You can wonder. You can push back. You can do all that. You can search out God with your mind, because if Jesus is who he said he was, he's the creator. I didn't say that right, did I? He's the creator of your mind, of your soul, of everything around you. And the beauty of it is, I had experiences that were very, very meaningful to me that deepened my belief. Well, someone could stand apart and say, well, good for you. That was just an emotional experience. The beauty I love about that is that I can say, okay, I get that. But Jesus is an historical figure. He's outside of me. You can assess him for yourself. You can look at his death. You can look at his life. You can look at his burial. You can look at his resurrection from the dead and all the claims of it. You can study that all you want. You can pursue it, ask questions about it, and come to your own real faith. That's why we have prayer teams to pray for you, but we offer resources in our lobby. We offer a blog, an explorer's blog, where we just try to give answers. That's why we're having series like Religion Ruins Everything. We want to dialogue about this stuff. One of our little sayings around here is we want to give what we've been given. And that's what I was given by others. A faith that could experience stuff, but a faith that could study things and reason over things and use rationality, use science. That's what we're going to talk about next week, and look at where does science fit in all this and how's that work and how do we assess those things. We want you to have that, and we want to offer that to you in any way you need. So pursue it. Do it. Look at Jesus for who he is. And remember, you can be all rational and reasonable and miss the truth. But we're not asking you to get rid of your rationality and reason. We're asking you to expand it. Consider other evidences. Look at who Jesus is. And I think you'll be amazed. I'm going to pray for everybody, and then we'll turn it over to your campus pastors. Father, in Jesus' name, thank you for the gift of truth. Thank you for the reality that you've created us. Thank you for our minds. Thank you for evidence. Thank you for Jesus, a real historical person that we can go back and look and ask questions about and investigate and wonder about and just kind of explore things with. And I pray that you will affirm that for people, those of us who already believe, that our faith will go up, not because we throw away rationality and reason, but because we embrace it and we have a good time with it. Especially for those of us that need that kind of thing. We're all wired different. But Lord, I pray for those who are exploring in our church, that they'll be open-minded enough to consider that maybe the rationale and reason, it's not wrong to use it, but it's just limited. And they need to let some other evidence inside that circle. We ask for you to do that. I pray that you'll lead people to your truth, because you said that everyone on the side of the truth listens to you. And so we want to be on the side of the truth. And we ask you for that gift. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.